Wreck your shot, Jonathan. You're good. Okay, Jen. Great. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you today. I'm in the press theater of the Legislative Assembly in the traditional territory of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. I want to start by acknowledging the news today from the coroner's office of a record month of opioid deaths here in British Columbia. 175 people have left us. Those are our sons, our daughters, our fathers, our mothers, our brothers, our sisters. This is the wrong direction to be heading when it comes to addressing the public health crisis that we inherited when we were sworn into government 3 years ago this Saturday. We've been doing everything we can to address this issue, but during the pandemic, the drug supply has been drying up because of closed borders, and that means that the poison drug supply has intensified. I want to lift my hands to those frontline workers, paramedics, firefighters, those in emergency rooms that are doing everything they can to keep people well, to keep people safe during a pandemic, and also addressing an opioid crisis. I also want to talk today about the announcement from the federal government of the Canada Safe Restart Plan. The Safe Restart Plan has been in the works for many, many months now. I've been an active participant in discussions. I think we've had 20 separate discussions about how we could work together. Political stripes, all different, Liberal, New Democrat, Conservative, different regions, different sizes of communities, whether it's be Nunavut and the Northwest Territories with massive geographic areas and small populations, or densely populated areas like the Lower Mainland, Metro Toronto, and Montreal. And throughout those discussions, we've had a common purpose as premiers and as leaders of the federal government. The Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister have been at the table every week having those discussions. My first call today was at 6 o'clock in the morning to finalize the details. And I'm particularly proud of our ability here in British Columbia to push the rest of the country to embrace the idea of a paid sick leave program, nationally funded and nationally coordinated. The Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Freeland were early adherents to the idea, and working with them and working with Premier Sandy Silver from Yukon and Brian Pallister from Manitoba, we've been able to get that one across the line. That's $1.1 billion to make sure that people don't go to work sick. Dr. Henry made it pretty clear to me early on in the pandemic that the biggest challenge we had in the restart was making sure that people didn't go to work when they had potential symptoms that could lead to transmission to other workers or customers in the economy. So I'm very proud of that. I'm also proud that we've been able to work on issues around vulnerable populations. There's an increase in funding for mental health issues. There's an increase in funding for childcare. There's an increase in funding for vulnerable populations, people with disabilities, and more to come in that regard. This funding is critically important for people, and it's an opportunity for us to take the programs that we've already got in place here in British Columbia and enhance them with federal dollars. Another area of critical importance, of course, to our economy is public transit. We've seen a drastic decline in ridership, but over the past number of weeks, as we've moved from phase 2 to phase 3 of our restart, we've seen an increased use in transit. But the fare box has been hit hard. Revenues for BC Transit, revenues for TransLink have fallen off a cliff. And having the support of the federal government as 50-50 partners as we rebuild ridership and work with municipal partners is critically important. Similarly, municipal governments have seen a decline in their revenues, which means it's going to be a challenge to keep the recreation centres open, to take care of various other issues that municipal governments take care of right across BC. Again, a 50-50 cost-shared program with the federal government is the best way forward, and I'm very pleased that the federal government understands and recognizes that the best way for them to have a positive impact on people's lives is to partner with other orders of government, whether it be the provincial government or municipalities across British Columbia. We still have a lot of challenges ahead. Minister James released our financial updates. I'm very proud that BC is the first province to lay out clearly and transparently where we are at this point in the pandemic, and the number was staggering. Minister James will be doing everything she can to manage that as the year goes by. Certainly the resources that we receive today from the federal government for PPE, for other initiatives will amount to about $2.1, $2.2 billion. We're going to be able to drive that into meeting our costs and providing services for people in the days and weeks and months ahead. Lastly, I want to touch on two issues that I would have focused on more today had it not been for the coroner's report about the tragic deaths of British Columbians, and also the good news about the Canada Safe Restart Plan. And that is two significant issues that have taken place here in British Columbia that have gone relatively unnoticed. Firstly, you'll recall two horrific fire seasons in 2017 and 2018 that devastated our public forests and put us behind the eight ball when it comes to tree planting and silviculture and getting our forests back to a healthy place. As we go into the tree planting year in 2020, we're hit with a global pandemic. That created fear in communities about workers coming from across Canada and across British Columbia to small, rural and remote communities to start that tree planting process. So we worked with the public health officers, we worked with communities, we worked with contractors who provide the services and put the workers in place to plant trees. And as we come to just about the end of the tree planting season, we have almost planted 300 million trees in British Columbia without one case of COVID-19, without any negative impacts in communities right across the province, but particularly in the interior. The second issue I want to highlight is how we've managed our food supply and how we've worked with the agricultural sector and temporary foreign workers who have been historically the backbone of our agricultural worker community during previous summers and previous growing seasons. This year, of course, temporary foreign workers are at a premium because of COVID-19. What British Columbia did, and separate from all other provinces in the country, is we put in place a program where we would interview and screen temporary foreign workers as they came into British Columbia, and if they exhibited any signs of illness, they were immediately quarantined. In doing so, we prevented 28 infected individuals from going to farms and communities around British Columbia and spreading that infection. It's that type of measure, again, championed by Dr. Henry and Minister Dix, that leads the country. British Columbia has led the way in so many areas, and I know after we've come to the conclusion on the Safe Restart with Canada, we'll continue to lead the country. And I want to put the federal government on notice in a very positive way that I will continue to support the call from the national police chiefs last week that we decriminalize personal use of opioids, so we take away the criminal stigma and focus on what this really is, a healthcare crisis. We don't want people to be criminals, we want them to be patients, and we want them to get well. And I know the federal government agrees with me on that. Now is the time to focus on that issue, and I am very excited about taking the lead of the National Police Chiefs Organization and other community leaders across British Columbia and indeed across the country in making sure that we can collaborate on that issue as well as we've collaborated on COVID-19. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Reminder to reporters on the line, please press *1 to get in the queue. If you've already pressed it, please press it again just to ensure that we see you here. Today we're going to go with one question and one follow-up question from each reporter. And our first question is from Richard Zisman. Go ahead, Richard.
Premier, in terms of the details of support from Ottawa, can you explain what the financial support will be for transit, how much money that will account for? And is there any additional financial support coming from Ottawa for housing, supporting either owners or renters?
Well, certainly one of the sticking points in negotiations over the past couple of days was the federal government initially put a cap on the transit funding. And major provinces like Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia would have eaten up the money that was put on the table without having any significant impact on the systems in Metro Toronto, in Vancouver, and in Montreal. So we worked with Minister Freeland to open up that bundle of dollars. So it is now open-ended, but it has to be 50-50 matching dollars. So every dollar the federal government sends to British Columbia, we will match it and put it to not just TransLink in the Lower Mainland, but to BC Transit, right across BC. And that was a sticking point, but it is open-ended. We anticipate we're going to be needing in the neighborhood of $600 million to get back on track, and we're going to work with TransLink, and we're going to work with BC Transit to make sure we get the dollars right. But this is for this year. We're going to continue to have challenges going forward. The federal government understands that. But again, we've responded, all of us, whether it be the steps that we took here in British Columbia going back to March and throughout the past number of months. When we've worked with the federal government, we've been pretty transparent, pretty open. This is the problem. This is what we need to do to fix it. And we've had a receptive partner, and that's why we're where we are today. Second part of the question,
more specifically about
supports for people. The federal government is working on announcements with respect to the wage subsidy issue. I think that might be out. I stand corrected if I'm doing the jump on the federal government. I apologize for that, but that's been one of the key issues as we've talked to businesses over the past number of weeks. The wage subsidy program has been critical to keeping key workers in place as we start to build confidence in the economy. So we're going to continue to press the federal government to keep these programs going as long as they possibly can so that we can get to a place where we can stand on our own 2 feet. And when I say that we, I mean all British Columbians. We have been successful in BC because we've been all in this together. We need to support local businesses. We need to make sure that when we have discretionary dollars, we're doing our level best to spend them at home. I don't want to discourage online activity, but I think that the bricks and mortar in local towns and communities around BC is far better to see your dollars than to go online and buy something that will come from somewhere else. Let's support people here. That's what the wage subsidy is there for, so that we can keep businesses going. But it can't just be a subsidy. It needs to be people voting with their feet, spending their dollars in communities right across BC.
Do you have a follow-up, Richard?
I do. On the housing issue, is there any specific funding there to help support the overall issue of housing in terms of what people are paying for their mortgages or for their rent?
Not at this time, Richard. I know that that's a critical issue. Minister Robinson's going to be talking about that, I think, later today or tomorrow in terms of BC's response. But as it is, that was not part of the restart discussion. There is, of course, resources for businesses on the rent side, and that's been a challenge. And we've worked with our business community to make sure the federal government understands the shortcomings in that program. We have programs here in place for renters, and we're going to be doing what we can to ease the burden as we come out from the deferral of many, many other issues that we've been allowing businesses and individuals to push down the road.
Our next question is from Rob Shaw.
Oh, hi, Premier. Just to follow up on some questions Richard had there. So you've mentioned 50-50 funding from Ottawa and BC for transit and municipalities on operating. BC has $1.5 billion set aside for recovery. I heard you throw out the figure of $600 million for transit. Do you know, is $1.5 billion going to be enough to accommodate BC's cost sharing in this? And do you know how much the total cost of what was announced from Ottawa today in terms of BC spend will be?
Well, much of our funding of transit throughout the year is already allocated, and so we're going to be adding additional dollars to meet the shortfall. But with respect to the $1.5 billion, we are in the final stages of the plan to release that in the weeks ahead to support people and businesses. And Carol and I, the Minister James and I, said at the beginning, if the monies that we had put aside were insufficient, we would increase those dollars. And I'm confident that Carol said that earlier in the week. We have a plan going forward. We're going to do our level best to stay within that plan. But the plan has been driven all the while by the needs of British Columbians, by making sure that we're providing the services that people need. And those services are in greater demand now than ever before. So we're going to keep trying to keep the dollars in check, but we are also focused on making sure people can bounce back and that be full participants in the economy. So some of the dollars that we're getting from the federal government for childcare, for example, critically important. The vast majority of childcares are up and running in British Columbia. That's good news. We're the only province in the country, in fact, in the continent, that has real-time data about how a safe restart of our K-12 system will work, because we've got a month worth of information during the voluntary return to school that we had in June. So I'm confident that we will continue to revise and revise again our plan to make sure that we're getting it right.
Do you have a follow-up, Rob?
Yeah, I'll just jam a couple things together here. Is BC Ferries included in the transit money from Ottawa? And back on the federal sick pay program, I know you've wanted that to be administered from Ottawa's existing employment insurance program. You mentioned it being nationally paid for and nationally coordinated. Is that through EI on the sick pay side?
I'll leave it to the federal government to give the details of how they're going to distribute the resources. All of the provinces that are participating, which is all of them, will require amendments to their Employment Standards Act to make sure that there's provisions for the flow of the dollars. You'll remember in our extraordinary session back in March, we made amendments to the Employment Standard Act for unpaid leave. So we've fulfilled that responsibility or obligation, and the federal government will flow the dollars in a program that they will devise. Again, we had planned within the $1.5 billion to fund a paid sick leave program. So these are dollars that we will not have to find. In this case of out of $1.1 billion that's currently allocated, and the federal government has said if there's a greater demand, if there's a significant second wave in the fall, they'll increase that. So those are dollars that we will not have to find. And again, I'm grateful that a Canada-wide approach to a Canadian challenge has been met not just with enthusiasm, but with a commitment to go further if required from the federal government.
Our next question is from Mary Griffin.
Oh, hi, Premier. Thanks very much for taking my question. It's actually for my colleague, April Lawrence. She's working on a story in Duncan, and 4 Cowichan tribe members have died of suspected overdoses in the past 4 weeks, including a 14-year-old girl. What do you say to her family and other Indigenous people who continue to be disproportionately impacted by this crisis?
Well, my condolences go out to the Cowichan tribes and particularly the families affected. This has been a crisis for half a decade now. Successive governments have put effort into this. We appointed a standalone Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. Minister Darcy will have more to say about the numbers today. I believe she's issued a statement. We're creating more treatment spaces. We have an act before the legislature that will help young people, particularly stay in hospital under medical supervision while they regain their faculties and decision-making processes are clearer for them. That's yet to pass the legislature, but we're doing everything we can to give parents some confidence that the Crown, the state, will do what we can to help their children when they run afoul of illicit drugs, currently illicit drugs. But this is a health issue, abundantly clear to me, and I think to the vast majority of British Columbians, and we need to tackle it as such. And that's going to require, again, national leadership, and I'm confident that the federal government will join with me once we move through this restart period and start to focus on the suggestions that are many throughout the community, not just the national police chiefs, but service providers for many, many months now have been talking about what we need to do to address this issue, and we're committed to doing everything we can.
Do you have a follow-up, Mary?
I do. Thanks so much. What specifically is the province doing to address this problem among Indigenous communities?
Well, we consulted with the First Nations Health Authority about the legislation that's before the House. We have worked with rural and remote and Indigenous communities to get more dollars into communities through the pandemic. Those can go to providing health care. We want to make sure that we're bringing health into communities. Telehealth and a whole host of other technological innovations are opening up doors for patients and for people struggling with addictions that weren't there before, but we need to make sure the technologies are in place and they're affordable for people and for communities, and we need to connect those communities with broadband internet service. This is an initiative that the government's been working on for a number of years. There's no one quick solution to this problem, but it's all of us working together, and most importantly, all of us recognizing that these people who are addicted to opioids are not criminals. They're patients and they need medical care. As we review the Police Act, which is just underway, we'll be able to look at where we can put resources to health care and the delivery of services for people rather than incarceration, litigation, all of the things that have slowed down success in our province. We want to make sure we're removing those barriers and giving people access to the services and particularly the treatment that they need.
Next question is from Tanya Fletcher.
Hi. Going back to the overdose crisis, you referenced it off the top, but putting the dual public health emergencies into perspective, you noted, 176 people died of COVID in the first 6 months of this year, and the same number of people died of an overdose in June alone. So how do you reconcile the province's differing responses to those who are criticizing that, the overdose crisis is being overshadowed by the pandemic?
Well, I just think that these are two separate things. We have an insidious virus that affects anyone at any time, and we have an opioid crisis that involves people using drugs. Those are choices initially, and then they become dependencies. So once people make those choices, they no longer are in a position to stop making those choices without intervention, without medical intervention. So I think they're two completely different things. The fact that the numbers are similar is a coincidence, but I don't believe there's anything we can learn from that. The COVID-19 crisis is a global crisis. We already see in the United States what happens if you don't follow basic guidelines. Too many faces, get a bigger space. Wash your hands. Physical distancing. Wear a mask if you can't do that. Those are conscious decisions people can make to protect themselves. When you're addicted to opioids, you're not making conscious decisions other than getting your next opioid. And those are issues that we need to intervene in, and we're doing our level best at a very difficult time. And the numbers are putting us back, no question, but there's a bunch of compelling reasons for that. The safe drug supply is not a safe drug supply, and we need to take steps to address that. Those are issues I want to raise with the federal government. We need federal intervention on the legal components of this in terms of decriminalization, and we also need a national plan, because although British Columbia is hit hard by this, we're not the only ones in the country.
Do you have a follow-up, Tanya?
I do, thank you. And you did mention off the top as well that the poison supply has intensified as the drug flow has dried up due to the border closure. So how do you fix that? Is there a plan to address that specifically, or what can be done about that?
Well, alternative therapies have been underway in British Columbia for some time. We need to reinvigorate that. And I'll leave it to Minister Darcy to lay out the details of our plans going forward. My approach to all of these issues is to put people in charge and ask them to do the work. And I know Judy's been working tirelessly on this. And we'll have more to say about these disturbing numbers from the coroner and our plans going forward. Partly, of course, the legislation that's before the House right now in terms of keeping young people in hospital when they present there so that we can get them to a place where treatment is an option. And then, of course, redoubling our efforts to make more recovery beds available, decriminalizing, and, of course, looking at making that drug supply safe so that we have patients that we can keep well, not people who are dying because they're being exposed to poisons that are being pushed by a criminal element. I don't want people to step away from this and conclude that the opioid crisis is not founded on a criminal element, because it is. But if you're addicted, you're not a criminal. You're someone who needs help, and I think all British Columbians want to reach out and help those that desperately need it.
Our next question is from Lisa Yuzda.
Hi there, Premier. Just regarding the opioids again, I'll take it off speakerphone. Regarding the opioids again, you talk about choice. Well, there's people who are choosing to put themselves at risk of transmission from COVID-19. And when we look at the money that's been put in and supports and effort poured into stemming COVID versus the opioids, it's hard not to see that the lives of people with addictions are worth less than people with COVID. And I wonder what you say to those families, because it's hard not to see that.
Well, what I say to the questioner, quite frankly, is that you can't compare the no one getting on public transit to an opioid crisis. No one was getting on public transit because they were fearful of a virus that we don't understand fully and that is easily transmitted in the broader community. So I appreciate that the numbers align today. But I think we're talking about two separate things here. They're both public health emergencies, without any doubt. And I say to the people who've lost loved ones, my heart goes out to you. But I also say to those who are still fearful that we need to do everything we can to suppress the transmission of COVID-19, that we're not out of the woods yet. I don't believe that we should bring these two things together, nor do I think that we need to separate them to get better outcomes. We are working as hard as we can. Minister Dix, Dr. Henry, also very attuned to the opioid crisis. In fact, my first meeting with Bonnie when she was first hired was about safe drug supply. So we've been working on this, trying to bring these numbers down. We've seen a spike in the past couple of months. It's very disturbing, particularly for those families affected. But I want British Columbians to know we are not abandoning them on this question. We're going to redouble our efforts to bring more resources, to bring more actions across the country, working with the federal government so that we can wrestle this to the ground, just the way we have all collectively wrestled COVID-19 to the ground.
And Lisa, do you have a follow-up?
I do. Regarding schools, Premier, I know we're going to hear from the minister, I think now in a few weeks, but parents are feeling the anxiety now, not knowing how they're going to make it work with jobs and childcare in a pandemic come September. I'm wondering if you have anything to say, because the buck ultimately stops with you, about what you can say to parents who are feeling anxiety about how they're going to manage all of these unknowns in the months to come.
Well, I certainly sympathize with families that are trying to figure out how they're going to proceed through the summer, how they're going to address September. But I have seen back-to-school flyers, so certainly the marketplace is acting as if all is normal. I know that Minister Fleming, I was just briefed yesterday on the plan to announce where we're going to be in September or later in July. We're consulting with British Columbians all the while. We're consulting with parents and, of course, the group that's come together of teachers, support workers, administrators, parents, to make sure that we have the best possible circumstances to enter into September. And I say to parents, be patient, have confidence that unlike every other jurisdiction in North America, we had a plan in June, it worked effectively, and we're going to build upon that to make sure we're ready for a full restart in September. If events change, we see an uptick in cases, and Dr. Henry is monitoring all of that very closely, as is Minister Dix. If we see an uptick in cases, we'll amend on the fly. That's what I think the public expects from us, but they also expect that we're going to deliver education for our kids. We're going to be as safe as we possibly can. That's our objective today, and that will be our objective through the summer.
Our next question is from Amy Smart.
Hi, Premier. I'm wondering, is there anything that you wanted to see in the federal funding but didn't?
Well, there's no shortage of things to ask for, but what I'm proud of is that as a group, and I said it off the top, this is a diverse group of people, 13 distinct jurisdictions, 3 territories, 10 provinces, as well as the national government, and we all came to the table with a basket full of problems, and we all decided that we would work collectively on those problems, focusing all the while on delivering for people. And I think this is unprecedented, quite frankly. I've been observing politics and federal-provincial relationships. I went to Australia to write about federalism and how they do it in Australia versus how we do it in Canada. And from my personal experience as a leader, we were not working this closely 3 years ago, and we have developed relationships and understanding of the challenges in PEI, the challenges in Nunavut, and the issues on the prairie in a way that is going to make Canada better as a result. And of course, that benefits people in every corner of the country. So, are there areas where we could have used some more money? Absolutely. But what excited me about it all is that we all came with a common purpose, and that was to make an agreement that met the needs of the greatest number of people. And I believe we were successful in that.
And do you have a follow-up, Amy?
Yeah, I'm wondering, now that you have the certainty of this funding, is it enough for you to release an economic recovery plan?
Well, our economic recovery plan has been underway since the announcement of the pandemic in March. We put in place resources for businesses. We deferred taxes in a whole host of areas. We put in place funding for workers. We went $700 million worth of property taxes for businesses. We've been building on it from the beginning. We are going to take these resources and put them towards those elements that we need to kickstart, like transit, like making sure municipalities have the resources they need so they can provide the services that are so important to people in towns and communities around British Columbia. the plan has been evolving from the beginning, and it's fairly clear that we're focusing on people. We're focusing on making sure that businesses have the confidence that they need to keep going. That means having the public health officer as well as WorkSafe BC giving a seal of approval to the plans that need to be in place for a safe restart. And that then will stimulate more economic activity. The public has to feel comfortable, though. And if we don't have confidence in the community that we've grappled with COVID-19 and we've flattened the curve, and we've seen an increase in cases up to in the 20s rather than the single digits that we were seeing earlier this month or last month. So we're mindful of all of that, and Dr. Henry was pretty clear that we're going to see an increase in cases as we see an increase in activity. But we need to make sure people are comfortable that they can go out into the world, participate in the economy, and that's how the restart will be successful.
Our next question is from Tom Fletcher.
Hi, Premier. On the estimated $5 billion in deferred sales taxes and other taxes you just referred to, coming from BC Business, is a tax holiday for some of that still off the table, or does this additional federal assistance make it a consideration?
Well, it has been and will continue to be a consideration, Tom. Minister James and I and a host of other ministers and MLAs have been reaching out to sectors, having broad consultations for months now, and we're building with every piece of new information, with every pocket or envelope of new dollars, to reinvigorate particular programs or give relief where it's needed so that we can see a benefit broadly across the economy. So we're not closing any doors at this point, and we're early days of phase 3. We're looking at other initiatives to keep things going. The hospitality sector is looking good. The film industry is looking good. Tourism is still a challenge. We need to see more people out and about, but we also need to be mindful that when you do go out and about, you have to be mindful and respectful of where you're at, and keep in mind that wherever you are, COVID-19 is a possibility. So keep a physical distance, wear a mask if you can't do that.
Do you have a follow-up, Tom?
Yeah, just briefly. We're looking at a deficit estimate at this point of $12.5 billion. I can understand the concern about not making that any bigger by giving or waiving some of these tax payments that are in the hands of the surviving businesses. I just want clarity on the deferral versus the waiver.
Well, we'll have more to say about that as the summer unfolds, Tom. I don't have any answers for you today. Minister James just announced earlier in the week the state of play in an open and transparent way, the only province to lay that out for citizens, and we're going to keep working to make sure that people are as whole as they can be on the business side, that workers are able to get back to their employment, and also to make sure we're putting in place programs for the fall to train and retrain workers so that we can get some of the new opportunities that flow from COVID underway and in place. We need to make sure that we're innovating and adapting as an economy. We have tremendous strengths here in British Columbia. We want to take advantage of all of that.
We only have time for one more, and that's going to be from Binder Sajan.
Hi, Premier. Just wanted to ask if during your conversations with the premiers of the federal government, if the issue around flights has come up. I know Dr. Bonnie Henry expressed some concern, and again, we are hearing COVID-related alerts from flights, and just wondering, where do you think we go forward from here?
Well, we certainly, when we gather as premiers, we talk about the border, absolutely. We talk about Air Canada and WestJet, two Canadian air companies that are critical to our economy, critical to keeping British Columbia and Canada as an opportunity for international travel when that returns as an option for us here in BC and in Canada. So the success of Air Canada and WestJet is critically important, as well as regional carriers here in BC, whether it be Harbour Air or Pacific Coastal or any other air carrier. We are always mindful, of course, that it's safe to do so, and Dr. Henry is is the lead on that, and she's been pretty clear, and I will stand with her on that. What I do know is that we need to make sure that everyone understands that if you're going to be getting into a plane, if you're going to be getting onto transit, it's a good idea to wear a mask. It's a good idea to be respectful of the people around you and keep as much distance as possible. How the airlines configure themselves to do business and to have travelers that are comfortable is pretty much up to them. But we want to make sure that they understand from a public health perspective, these are the parameters that they should operate under, and Dr. Henry's been clear on that.
And do you have a follow-up, Binder?
I do. There's a new report out, and we've heard also the finance minister talking about this, about how women are particularly hard hit by this pandemic because of their caregiving responsibilities. And I'm wondering, in the recovery plan, do you anticipate having specific programs to address the unemployment amongst women?
We have been working, as I said, with Zoom calls and various other consultations with people across BC. The Parliamentary Secretary, Mitzi Dean, for gender issues has been key to all of that. We have seen a disproportionate impact on women, people of color, vulnerable populations, and that's why I'm so pleased to see resources available for childcare, which is not exclusively a women's issue, of course, but childcare and vulnerable populations in the federal package. We have already been focusing on those issues, and we want to encourage businesses and others, not-for-profits in British Columbia, who, by the way, have been equally hit. The not-for-profit sector is extremely challenged right now. Donations are down for not-for-profits. Staff are at shortages, and dollars to deliver the services that not-for-profits deliver are challenged as well. And those are, as you say, oftentimes largely women that are delivering those nurturing type services within the not-for-profit sector. So we're conscious of it, and we're working on a plan to make sure that we see a broad recovery that includes everybody in every part of the province and every sector.
Thank you, everyone. That's all the time we have.